Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hi, I'm Bob Nickman, and welcome to the Exploding Human podcast I'm doing. Today I'm interviewing Grace Cheng-Braun, who is the president of an organization called Wise and Healthy Aging. It is a nonprofit that works with people 50 and older, mostly older, and they're a fabulous organization that does a lot of great work with a variety of issues that have to do with the aging process, from assisted living and long-term care assistance to programs for education, and they have a thing called Club 51, which is like it's like an entertainment and daycare kind of a thing, but daycare is not really the right word for it. They have classes there, and I have done a comedy show for them a number of times, and it's been really fun. That's how I met Grace, and I thought, geez, we're all getting older if we're still around, right? And we're heading toward that time in life when we're considered senior citizens. Everyone will be there if they're still here. And what does that look like? What does that mean? And how do they help people from all walks of life, all income brackets, and all different types of needs? They have an amazingly wide array of services that they do. So I really wanted to find out more about that. It's a really terrific organization. So this is Grace Cheng-Braun. Tell us just a little bit about I know it's a broad spectrum of what you guys do here, so let's start with that.
Well, if I may.
Yes, you may do whatever you want.
Well, no, I just want to compliment you and thank you for your participation with Wise and Healthy Aging in our Club 1527, which is our senior recreational enrichment programming for older adults who are 50 and older. And so the whole comedy classes, comedy improv is of such value because I'm a firm believer that laughter is the best medicine. And so I know that our older adults really enjoy the classes that are offered in that area, as well as the other health and fitness classes and such. So that is one of the many programs that we have at Wise and Healthy Aging. We're headquartered in Santa Monica, California, and we also have regional offices for another program that I'll talk about in a bit in Van Nuys, Pasadena, Montebello, and Lakewood. And so we are a unique community-based social services organization. We focus only on older adults and their caregivers. And we cover both older adults that reside in what traditionally is the residential community. So these are your neighbors in apartments or homes or such, and those older adults and disabled adults that are residents in long-term care facilities. So these are then what traditionally are known as the nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities, board and care, assisted living. And they can range from anything that is, unfortunately, there are some cockroaches of places that are out there, to the very high end, over $15,000 a month concierge level service and high rises and such that are available. And so we are the City and County of Los Angeles Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program and elder abuse prevention services. And so with these regional offices that I indicated, we cover the entirety of the County of Los Angeles in advocating for the rights and the dignity of the residents that actually live in long-term care facilities.
So is it a state program then?
It is actually a federally funded program.
Oh,
So
okay.
it is across the country. In every state, there is an ombudsman program. Generally, it's broken down by counties, if you will. Sometimes the government itself will run the programs. Sometimes it'll be run via a community-based nonprofit organization. So in this case, in California, in Los Angeles County, Wise and Healthy Aging has been administering and managing the Ombudsman program since the early 1980s.
So that program is run by maybe other agencies in different
Counties.
counties. Okay,
Yes,
but
yep.
but is this a Santa Monica organization
So
or just located here?
So we just happen to be located. So we're headquartered in
Okay.
Santa Monica, and a good amount of our other services are focused on the Los Angeles West Side. However, the long-term care ombudsman program and the elder abuse prevention services, those are county-wide. And we also have some other new programs that we just added. But if I may note, so not many people would think of a distinction that we have, and that is there are more long-term care facilities in Los Angeles County than all the other counties combined in in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, wow, so we actually are the largest long-term care ombudsman program in California. We also have the distinction of being the largest. We have more long-term care facilities in Los Angeles County than any other state in the nation.
How many are there in Los Angeles
so
County?
there are, I want to say, like over 1,800 or so.
Really?
Yeah, and these are licensed facilities, and there are a number of unscrupulous, below the radar ones that operate board and cares without a license.
Yeah.
And usually, what happens is then we become aware of them when something bad happens. So we work very closely with the law enforcement and code enforcement and public health and whatnot in when these things happen. So the ombudsman is the equivalent to adult protective services on the long-term care facility side, in that we are the preliminary investigators of any allegations of abuse or neglect in long-term care facilities.
That's important because,
Yes.
when I think about some people, they outlive friends and relatives.
Yes,
and
there's
nobody,
no one.
And there's no one.
Yes.
And, I guess the people that do have someone are very, very fortunate if they have children that are helping
Many
them.
of us, and we see this in the clients that we serve and within the seniors, is that most are thinking, I'm going to live in my home, and most want to live in their home until that point that they pass, that they go to the hospital and then something happens and they pass, if you will, or they're able to die in their homes. And that's actually not the reality. Most Americans will spend their last months or years in a long-term care facility of their life. And many are at that point without anyone else in their life.
Yeah, I was talking to my insurance agent about
Yeah.
long-term care
Insurance.
health insurance,
Yes.
which I got a number of years ago.
Mhm.
And he said about 50% of people need it. That was the statistics
Yeah.
he said. So
And it is,
you got a real good
yeah.
shot at using it at some
Yeah.
point, whether you
right.
want to or not.
And with this population, this aging population that many have called the silver tsunami, right? So, by 2030, which is not that far away, the last of the baby boomers will be turning 65. So that's like 1 in 5 Americans, 20% of our population. And the infrastructure in the United States and in many countries around the world is really not set up or have really thought strategically about how to prepare for this onslaught of aging population. And interestingly, not only do we have this large population of boomers that are aging, we also have people who are living so much longer. It used to be, and I remember watching, the Today Show, and they would have these Smuckers, sponsored shout out for folks that were turning 100. On a particular day.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's not that uncommon for someone to be turning 100. And so we are seeing many more of these centenarians. And actually, the fastest growing population among older adults is those that are 85 and older.
I didn't know that, but it
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, my father, who just recently passed away, was almost 96.
Yeah, and my father just celebrated his 95th birthday this past Thanksgiving.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was unheard of when
Yes.
I was a kid, that
Yes.
people lived that long.
Yeah.
It was late 70s,
Exactly.
maybe early
Exactly.
80s.
And so now when we hear somebody passing in their 60s, which is not, that back then was considered like old, we say, oh, he or she was so young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me now. So.
Right, exactly. So it's like, I just had a friend that turned 60, and we say, oh, 60 is the new 40.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, what are the biggest issues with the aging population that you're seeing, and where are we excelling in helping
Sure,
those people,
sure.
and where are we not?
Yeah. Well, I think that, you have within this aging population, and, so I talked about one of our larger programs, the Ombudsman Program and Elder Abuse Prevention Program. Some of the other programs that we offer here through our headquarters here in Santa Monica are care management, case management, which is in-home services to help support aging adults to be able to stay living in their homes as long as possible. And so connecting them with the resources that they need and such, and to prevent premature institutionalization whenever possible. Then we also, because we are a charitable organization in the work that we do. So while we do have a fee-for-service services that we provide, we also focus on those seniors that are of very limited financial means. And through contracts with the government that provide that safety net, however shrinking that is, we are able to then help seniors stay healthy and such. So we have a lunch program that is at a couple of different sites here in Santa Monica. And we also have transportation services, including door-through-door service. We have an adult daycare program. We have caregiver support activities. We have mental health, peer counseling. So a number of other programs to really sort of be that wraparound one-stop shop, if you will. So what we're seeing is that for older adults who are of limited financial means, housing, transportation, two big issues in that regard. Housing, especially here on the west side, even with affordable housing, there is just not enough.
Not enough, and
Not
it's still
enough.
not incredibly affordable. It's
Exactly.
you're right on the edge if
Exactly.
you're on SSI or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so we see a lot of clients that are just barely making it by that. When you and they have said for quite a while, do not count on Social Security to be that source that is going to get you by. That is just one piece. However, many people are relying on that as almost the only source that they have. And so when you take a look at what then they pay in rent and in food and such, there's not much left over, if you will. And so there are people who actually go hungry before the month's end in that regard. And so we really, with our social workers, we really take a look at who are these vulnerable individuals and what resources can we connect them to. Whether it's tapping into with our colleagues at Meals on Wheels West to make sure that they get they get food, working with our colleagues at the Affordable Housing Division and the city's housing department to take a look at what else can be done. Whether there are exemptions, we have a benefits enrollment center that actually helps seniors determine eligibility for 5 public benefits, which includes the food voucher system. And also Medicare, Medi-Cal, and also homeowners tax exemptions for some of the utilities benefits that are available for seniors. So we really take a look at whatever that we can to provide services and such. And I have often said to people too that, headquartered here in Santa Monica, we are greatly blessed by the work that we do in conjunction with our colleagues through the City of Santa Monica's Human Services Division. And I've often, sort of half jokingly say to people, if you're going to be a senior, all right, you want to live in Santa Monica.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Because there are wonderful services and many at no cost to the older adult that they can access for enrichment, because, it's not just about surviving, it's about continuing to thrive and creating purpose and having purpose, which is one of, that's a health indicator for individuals and such.
Well, I know that with certain, people hit a certain age and they may not be able to navigate the system. It can be daunting.
Very daunting.
And so let's say somebody contacts you and says, I'm 85 years old and I'm struggling in these areas. You send a social worker to their home, and is that how it works? Or do they come here? How do they get here?
It can happen a number of ways. So someone can start by calling us at 310-394-9871. That's our main number. And then we from there will navigate depending on their needs. So we have information referral and assistance. And if somebody is calling and they are living in the community and they're experiencing some issues, so we work with a number of other what I call sister agencies in the community.
Okay.
So for example, Legal Aid Foundation of LA, we have Monday morning every other week legal clinics that they're available.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
They come here and
they come here and
okay.
they meet with an attorney and go over any matters or such that they may have. We also work with the pro bono financial planners and consultants to help folks that may have some financial issues and such. We have a Medicare counselor who wonderful gem of a man, Steve Miller, who's a volunteer that's been trained through another nonprofit here in LA and is based with us once a week. And this is a season, and he actually is quite busy because folks are trying to understand Medicare insurance. And many at that point that they reach that age, they're like going, okay, now what do I do? And so we have everything from those sort of financial logistics matters to also health and well-being. So, for example, we are the geriatric externship site for Yosan University in Culver City, which is a nonprofit academic institution that trains that next generation of Chinese medicine professionals that are the licensed acupuncturists.
I used to go there for acupuncture.
Yes.
I had a friend who was studying there, so I would actually go there.
So they as part of their community service, which is wonderful, they set up sites, externship sites, like at Children's Hospital, with LA County, with Venice Family Clinic, and with us, we're their geriatric externship site. And so once a week on Thursday mornings, we have a free community clinic for older adults to have acupuncture. And their fourth-year students come over with a clinical supervisor, and I think one of our oldest client is 102, who comes every Thursday and has a session, and she's just doing beautifully. So we do these various we set up services that are available for older adults to access. And then one of the areas that I think that is big and is only going to continue to grow, and that is the caregivers. So I myself, I'm a caregiver, primary caregiver to my 95-year-old father who lives with my husband and me. Mm-hmm. And has been for the past 10 years. And that is not all that uncommon. That as I look across at other friends and colleagues and such, and I am not in that sandwich position of that I don't have children that then I'm also taking care of, if you will. And many do.
Yes.
And so because of this aging population that is living much longer, we find that, and I'll backtrack a little to say, when people say, so, when you say seniors, who do you serve? And I say, well, we say a senior for us is anyone who's 50 and older. Now some people go, wow, that's young.
Well, that's when
right?
ARP starts sending the materials to join, I guess.
Exactly. And so they say, well, how did you choose 50? And we say, well, when AARP or ARP, that's where they set it at. And so we thought, that other half of one's life. And so while some people who just turned 50 or in their early 50s would not consider themselves a senior, we view that they are our client demographics,
base, yeah.
if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we take a look at, so who does Wise and Healthy Aging serve? And we've been serving older adults and such in the community since the early 1980s. So we serve, essentially, I would say three groupings of folks, and they overlap in that there are some that would. So, for example, I would be a senior because I'm 59 years old. All right, so I'm in that group of potential, seeking services and such from Wise and Healthy Aging. I also am a caregiver. I'm a caregiver of someone who, so therefore I fall into the caregiver piece. So what we have is we have three different groupings. One is the active older adult, I would say, and you and I fall under that category, that are still active, working, full-time, part-time, fully retired, that are engaged in life, that are dealing with issues personally of sort of financial, looking at the future, having enough money, or what to do, and having purpose in life, wanting to change their careers, trying out new things, being, they're entrepreneurial in nature, and such. All right. So we have this group. Then we look at services to provide to them that continues that active engagement. Then we have the group that we call caregivers. And caregivers, many also overlap with this first group that I noted. And so we say that we support caregivers, and that is anyone who is 18 and older, that is the primary caregiver for someone who is 50 and older. Mm-hmm. All right? And so we have, young adults who are helping grandparents, caregiving for grandparents and such. We have also spouses that are in their 90s that are caregiving for their spouse who is also in their 90s or in their hundreds, and which then lends us into this other group, which is we call the frail elderly. So these are individuals that traditionally people would say, okay, these folks are old, okay, and they know they're old. So they're not afraid to ask for the senior discount, right? And they're happy to talk about various conditions and ailments and whatever things that are concerning them and whatnot, right? And so some of them are also caregivers. So you have this overlap in the three groupings of what we would say are clients that we serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we take a look at this large population, the challenge then is for us as a society is to take a look at how do we create quality of life? How do we create purpose? How do we continue to engage older adults to give back, to help each other, and such, against this moving target of decline? All right, because something that we cannot prevent is that life, in one's journey in life, the end point is death, and that one's, however we eat right and exercise and such, one's body will continue to decline. That's the sort of the natural part of aging. And so how do you balance that moving target, if you will, as that continues to move, with then creating purpose and quality of life and engagement and such?
Yeah, it's it is the sort of the big question, because you don't know this when you're young,
Mm-hmm.
but as you start to get older, you I'm in my early 60s and I can see what's coming.
Yeah.
And while I'm not necessarily afraid of it, I want to be as prepared as I can,
Yes.
and know what my choices are.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I think this is somewhat unfortunate that the healthcare is so advanced
Mm-hmm.
that we're keeping people alive longer
Yes.
with not a great quality.
Yeah, having to deal with chronic disease, and so from a quality of life standpoint, that there's impact. Also, with this large population, the dementia, Alzheimer's disease, that is also something that is huge, and so having families and people having to deal with that, and what support that there is available for that, because that's a whole nother factor.
I wanted to ask you about the taking care of caregivers, how that, because it's really emotionally draining.
It is
Physically draining.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult thing to do, even in the best of circumstances.
Right, and I would say that actually is true for both lay family caregivers and also working caregivers. When we take a look at the pipeline of trained caregivers working, paid, that we have, there is not enough in the pipelines to be able to take care of the numbers that are projected, and a lot of the responsibility is falling and will continue to fall on family and friends and neighbors. There's the kindness of neighbors. A number of apartment buildings where I know of where longtime residents, where you have the younger adults that befriend the elderly neighbor who doesn't have anybody, and they take on that caregiver role, and so the burnout is tremendous. And what we do is that we provide caregiver support groups. We also provide the nuts and bolts training, skills training for both lay and working caregivers, because sometimes, there is the emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is just learning some of the things, the techniques and the things that you can do to make caregiving easier.
Yeah.
And how to deal with certain situations, and how to safely transfer someone, what to look for, how to engage in conversations, or to move somebody off of a conversation when it's not sort of going the right way. So there are a lot. So we actually are the only licensed in California of a national evidence-based caregiver training curriculum that is available. And that caregiver training also includes a specialty course for caregivers dealing with those who have Alzheimer's disease or dementia. And we were the first in the nation to actually translate that specialty course into Spanish. And we just got some foundation funding from UniHealth Foundation and the Root Foundation to take that specialty course and now translate it into Farsi, Korean, and Chinese, and to be able to train some instructors here in Los Angeles, because we're so diverse, to actually deliver that course into their communities.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very excited about that.
Yeah. So that is a piece of what you do is getting funding. Is that part of your personal job, or do you have somebody that does that?
Well, it takes a village. It takes a village, I would say. So we are a nonprofit organization. And we're not so people sometimes confuse when they go, oh, nonprofit. Okay, so you're not really into money. We actually are into money. We love money. And I tell folks that the only difference between us in running our enterprise from a for-profit organization is that there is actually nothing different in the business side of things. We want to actually generate as much funds as we can and revenue. The only difference is that we have a cause. We are mission-based, and that the proceeds and the earned revenues and donations such goes back into the organization to help more people who are not otherwise not able to afford services and such, right? And so we view ourselves as an organization that serves and does not discriminate among anyone. So those who have the means that wish to purchase our services, we are able to do that. And we have also included in that all the way to concierge level type of attentiveness, if you will, right? Then we have those, who may only be able to afford to a certain extent. We have sliding scale. Mm-hmm. And then we also have, from the generosity of private foundations and donors, and also government contracts that allow us to cover our expenses to be able to provide services at no cost to those individuals that have very limited financial means.
That's fantastic, though. I mean, it's so no one is going to be
no
denied.
one's going to get turned away in that regard. Now, our approach is that while we are a multi-service organization, and if you take a look across Los Angeles, there's no other organization like us that only focuses on older adults, that covers both the long-term care setting and the residential setting. We're the only one.
I wanted to ask you some personal things
Yes,
of how you got, not super personal, just in terms of this.
Sure. Yeah.
How you got started. I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, that you were a social worker.
No, I do not come from a social work background.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I love to hear something new.
So my background is that I'm actually trained in healthcare and in healthcare administration, if you will.
Okay.
So I got my graduate degree from UCLA in health planning and policy. And back in those days, when you get out of graduate school and you go and work for a healthcare system, hospital or such, somebody with that type of a degree would work in the strategic planning, business development end of things. Because back then, marketing was a dirty word in healthcare. And so as marketing became more accepted, sales was the dirty word then at that point, right? But public relations is always the nice word, right?
Sure.
And so those with business degrees and planning degrees and whatnot, advanced degrees, then took on the strategic planning and communications, public relations, and marketing. And so I've had the honor of, for 26 years, working in healthcare, of working with just really wonderful healthcare systems, nonprofit healthcare systems, such as the UniHealth system, Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange, UCLA Health, and Cedars-Sinai. So I actually headed up marketing and PR for Cedars-Sinai for 6 years before I transitioned over into community-based social services. And I wasn't really looking for that, if you will. I was approached by a colleague of mine who was on the Y Senior Services Board, which is one of the organizations which I became the president and CEO of 12 and a half years ago. And then 2 years into that, we took it through the merger with Center for Healthy Aging that then became Wise and Healthy Aging that we are today. And I was approached by this board director about, whether I might have a interest in the position of president and CEO of Wise Senior Services. And I remember half jokingly saying to her, "Don't I need to be a little older?" And she said, "No. The current president is, right around your age." And she just, had this plum opportunity to head up a business school up in San Francisco and such. And so I remember I then asked her, I said, I'm curious, why did you think of me? And she was very kind, and she said, I remember when I worked with you at Santa Monica Hospital, that you would always go to bat for your people. And I thought that you would be good in that regard.
That's a very big compliment.
So I was very touched by that, because I would say that most often than not, people would that know me would more say, she's results, oriented and such. And so it was very nice to hear this. And so I decided to take a look at it, because I've lived in Santa Monica ever since the early 1980s when I went to graduate school at UCLA. And so I've known of Y Senior Services and Center for Healthy Aging and their two respective longtime presidents and executive directors. And they've always had a very, very held in high regard in the community. And so, and I always watch them and know that they're doing good things. And when I was working on the hospital side, I was in charge of community benefit and community relations, so as one of my areas. And so therefore I would work with agencies like Y Senior Services and others to take a look at how do we collaborate on community benefit and such. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll take a look at this. And I chose to take this on for a couple of reasons, if you will, and not in any particular order. One was that, I thought that, gosh, okay, so here I am, at the, I'm approaching the other half of my life, and what do I want that to mean? All right. As you said, now you're thinking about, like, okay, I can see what's ahead, more clearly than when I was in my, teens or 20s and such. And so I wanted to have what I would do have meaning, and that I would know that at the end of my life that, okay, I gave it my all, right? And so I felt, well, this was certainly something that would be worthwhile to pursue. And that and as a Chinese American, I am woefully ashamed of how we Americans treat our elders. All right, and I thought, okay, so if I could at least do something then that could at least shift that paradigm a bit in the time that I'm here on Earth, that would be something worthwhile to take on. All right, so that was that. I also thought, okay, I've never been a president and CEO of a community-based nonprofit, organization, and sort of thought, well, how hard could that be,
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Sounds hard to me. Let me just tell you,
it is. It can be overwhelming. And so, because I had thought of the size of the organization at that time, was like going, well, that's about the size of FTEs, employees that I work with at Cedars-Sinai. If you take a look at the operating budget, and such, I've managed, very similar sized and whatnot. And I will say that it does, I don't know if I can say this, on air. It has kicked my butt in that regard.
You can say that. It's
And
a podcast. You can say
oh,
whatever
okay,
you want.
all right. And so it has been and continues to be the most rewarding and also the most overwhelming for
How many
me.
people are
So
roughly
so
under the umbrella?
we have at this point about 72 individuals that
that's a lot
work
of-
with our organization,
Mhm.
and then with that we have over 200 volunteers, and we have a wonderful board of directors of individuals that volunteer their time from the professional world that provide the governance and the fiduciary oversight of what we do with our mission, which is to advance the dignity and the quality of life of older adults.
Mhm.
And that we do this through innovative, high-quality services and advocacy and such. And so I'm very proud to have taken this on. It wasn't something that I was looking, There was also that one part of logistics of I had never in my career, even though I've lived in Santa Monica since the early 1980s, I've always worked outside of Santa Monica, if you will. All right. And I've commuted, whether it was to Pasadena or Yorba Linda or Camarillo, Cedar Sinai out in Beverly Hills and such. I've always commuted. So the idea was like, wow, I could actually, they're headquartered in Santa Monica. I can get off the freeway. that was a consideration.
The longer I'm in Los Angeles, the more important it becomes to how can I figure out a way not to have to drive somewhere?
Yeah. And today when we're, and that becomes an issue for us too, because, when we are interviewing candidates for positions, we take a look at, the commute for that individual, which does, while some say, oh, that won't be a problem, whatnot, it does wear on you, and there is an impact.
Well, when you think about maybe some people spend 3 hours a day in the car.
Easily.
And that's not even, right, it's not even a
Easily.
huge amount. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that could be used for lots of other things.
Yeah, and you really nowadays in LA, you can't say, oh, how many miles is that, right? Because it's like it could be 6 miles and it'll take you an hour, and so it really is how much time of day, the windows of opportunity, which are smaller and smaller.
You were talking about having 200 volunteers.
Yes,
I'm intrigued by that.
Yes.
Just one is, are you, what types of volunteers are there? Are you always looking for people?
Oh,
How can people contribute?
Yes. So we love volunteers. And I would say that older adults make the best volunteers, in my opinion. All right, because they've been around. They know.
Am I included in that?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're a gem of a volunteer.
Thank you. I feel good about that. Maybe I'll have to start doing more now that I've been praised.
I love that. Yeah. So we have volunteers in almost all of our programs, and there's over a dozen programs that we have. So we have volunteers. I talked about the Ombudsman program earlier. So we have volunteers that live throughout Los Angeles County that become volunteers for that program, where they go through 36 hours of state certification training to be a volunteer ombudsman. And then they work alongside our staff, and they are the eyes and ears that make visits to long-term care facilities to advocate and to just check in and to be a friendly face to residents and such. So we have them, and of course they live throughout the county because we have regional offices and such. So it's to be able to cover the entire county. So that's a real special group
So you
of volunteers.
You have paid people doing that and
volunteers.
And volunteers.
We
that
could
work
not do what we do without volunteers.
It seems like that. Yeah.
Then we have volunteers such as yourself and others through Club 1527, who are the instructors and facilitators of workshops and classes and such. And they do it out of the kindness of their heart as a way to give back, pay it forward, if you will. and making a difference in that regard, so that we are able to keep the costs down and to be able to have as many people engage and be able to participate and such. I'll just give a shout out for Club 1527. Most communities, most municipalities will have what is called a senior center. Right.
Yes.
And that traditional stereotype of a senior center, it's like it's somewhere, the building may be a little old or dated or such, and they like to play bingo. All right. Well, that is not the older adults of today, active older adults today. What we're seeing across the nation is that seniors going to senior centers are actually aging out. All right. And the boomer population don't want to be caught dead in a quote unquote senior center. Right. That just does not relate to them. And so we're seeing a transformation of these older adult recreational centers, if you will. And in our case, we were approached by the city of Santa Monica to take on the senior recreational center that they had run for 26 plus years. And so we had said, okay, we'll do that. And this was about, a little over...
You're talking about the one by the ocean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in that Camera Obscura building and such, right?
Yeah,
so that
right.
was there for over 26 years
Right.
and such. Great ocean view, but limited space and such. So we were approached about 5 years ago to see if we would take on operating that. And we had said, okay, 2 conditions. One is we actually wanted to move it so that it would be here in the Ken Edwards Center at 1527 4th Street in Santa Monica, where it becomes more of a one-stop shop for the older adults with the other services that we have on the 2nd and the 3rd floor. And the other, I said, is that we would want to change the name.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked with our constituents, and I proposed, how about club? Because it is a club, all right, for a very nominal fee. If you're 50 and older in Santa Monica residents, it's like, $20, $25, a year. And then if you're not a Santa Monica resident, it's like $45 a year. And so it's a club. And then I proposed, how about Club 1527? 1527 is the address here on 4th Street. They loved it, right? And so
sounds
we're
like a New York City disco or something.
There you go. and we're at 700 plus residents, of which that are members, of which 65% are Santa Monica residents and such.
Oh, I didn't know it was that many people.
Yeah, and
I know every time I've come in, there's people.
Monday through Friday, we've starting at 9:00, and we have programming that goes on into the early afternoon and such. And so that's, one of the activities and such. Then there is also the lunch program that we have that we call Wise Diner. And we have about 200 seniors that are there. So we have volunteers that are in Club 1527. Then we have volunteers that actually help serve food in our Wise Diner lunch program, Healthy Lunches program for seniors. We have volunteers that are in our adult daycare program that help with activities and programs. We have a program in our adult daycare service center that is called Wise Minds, that are for individuals that are dealing with the early diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's, early onset memory loss. Specific to that, we have volunteers that are Spanish speaking that volunteer in our Somos Amigos adult daycare program. Then what you would call your traditional volunteers that volunteer to help out with the phones, calling, or some of the admin, filing, or data entry, input, and such. And we do have a new program that we just added. I'm very excited about. It's actually something that's been around since the early 1980s also, and it's called Los Angeles Oasis. Oasis actually is a national initiative that started in St. Louis in the early 1980s. It's about lifelong learning and volunteer engagement and health and promotion and prevention for older adults. So back then, grassroots, these individuals in St. Louis created this opportunity where the May family of Robinson's May and Macy's agreed to donate space in their stores for classrooms for the community.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
for older adults.
Oh.
And so and then they got some funding from the Reynolds Foundation and other federal sources and such, and they launched it. And so today there are 40 locations across the nation that offer OASIS programming. So we just this fall, just very recently, joined forces with the OASIS Institute, what I call the mothership in St. Louis, and we are actually running the OASIS programming for Los Angeles. So we changed the name to Los Angeles OASIS because we felt that that was more fitting than Pacific Region OASIS. And so Los Angeles OASIS is now a program of wise and healthy aging. And these are classes that older adults can take in arts and humanities, health and fitness, special interest. Some are fee-based, and some are no charge because they're funded from other sources that are available. And we're very excited about being part of that. The OASIS Institute has a program for intergenerational tutoring. So older adults trained to go into the elementary schools and to spend an hour each week with a child, a student, and to help them with their reading.
I love that.
Yes.
That works for both sides.
Yes, it's a win-win.
I
love anything that's intergenerational in that regard. And the OASIS Institute just received a national award for the intergenerational program.
You know, I saw this talking about the intergenerational thing. I saw this mini documentary, and I don't know what country this was going on in, but it was like an assisted living type place. But they also rented rooms to college students, and they would live there, and they would and for this reduced rent, or I don't even know if it was free rent or very reduced rent, they would help assist the elderly people that live there, and it worked unbelievable. At least the way they did the documentary. I thought, why aren't we doing this here? And maybe we are. I don't know.
With housing as an issue, one has to be much more creative about that. And we do have seniors that as they age and they're in homes or apartments or such that are larger than what they need, right? There are resources in the community that will match up folks to be roommates.
Oh, okay. So that idea is not
and so you have that opportunity of having older adults that become roommates, if you will, and sort of share. Somebody who has a house that could use a little added income, if you will, and somebody who needs housing to become roommates. So they have their, they kind of match them up in that way. But certainly I think there are also opportunities there intergenerationally for younger adults that are looking for housing to do that. And, we've had some of our staff that are sort of new out of graduate school, some of our social workers or such, who have been able to find, because rent is expensive here in LA, and they've been able to find a situation where they have a room in an elderly individual's home, and they've developed this wonderful friendship, and so they're able to afford living here on the west side, and at the same time they are sort of that extra eyes and ears for this individual. And they form nice friendships out of that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
What about pets?
Pets. Oh,
I didn't. I just thought of it as you were talking. I go,
I would love to start a program. This is something on my that's on my list of things I'd like to do in my time with Wise and Healthy Aging. Is I like to start a program called Wise Tales, and it's TAILS, right? I already got the logo thinking for it, right? So yes, so we have wonderful volunteers that bring in therapy dogs into our adult day program for visits and such, and because my earlier career predominantly has been in healthcare, where I've also overseeing public relations and volunteer services with these healthcare organizations. So I see the pooch therapy program, that comes into the hospitals and such, and the dogs that come in and visit the patients and whatnot. And so I think there's some real value in that, and would love to see how we can start something up in that regard.
Yeah.
To be able to, perhaps our social workers be able to take, some service trained pets to go and visit our clients and such, and that you may even have this sort of like, I got this, I saw this show where in Japan you can rent out a pet for a weekend or for a couple of hours, because there's such a busy working society that they have this program that you can rent a dog.
Right.
Right?
I don't have the time and energy to actually
yeah,
own one.
Right, but let me rent it for a Saturday afternoon, and get all the loving and the and the activity and the fun and such, and without, because many of them don't have the actual physical space to be able to accommodate a pet as much as they would like to. So I think there's a lot of wonderful creative ways to take a look at, and again, it's about quality of life. And we're about to launch a new program in 2018 in the spring called Working Wise, because what we've also identified, when I talk about housing and transportation, also some of the issues for older adults is the ability to still get by financially, and unfortunately many just have not planned, and for those who have planned, they maybe didn't plan for that far out and such.
Well, also
so
things have
running,
changed and gotten much more expensive,
yes, and
like just food alone has gone
short,
through the roof.
And they run short, right? And we do have individuals that actually aren't, because the word retirement or retire, actually, we need to retire that word, because it's not, it just doesn't, it doesn't fit anymore.
No, it really doesn't.
No, right? Because we have individuals that, they're just having multiple additional chapters to their life that are starting totally new things, businesses, successful businesses and such. And so we need to be kind of thinking about it differently in that regard. So we recognize that there are those who are older adults, younger older adults, who are not ready to just sit and kind of do nothing and watch TV, if you will, or such. And they're not necessarily looking to they may volunteer, but that's not the bulk of what they want to do, all right? They actually still want to work. And some of them want to change what they've been doing to something totally different or whatnot. And so we're developing a program with some advisors in from the workforce, HR world and workforce development realm, is to help those who have an interest to continue to work or to get back to working, because there is a financial need to do so, of having that reality check of like, okay, so what is the work world today?
Yeah.
Very different.
And
very
also
different.
something maybe that doesn't require as much physical exertion as when they were younger. And they can work at home.
Yeah,
possibly.
and what realistically,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can align people's expectations in that regard, and then even moving them to the point of actually then preparing them.
I was just thinking, when do you sleep?
Well,
this is like a huge thing that you do.
We're a mover and a shaker in the community, and I will say that as I'm reading about this healthy aging thing, and you always hear what Dr. Oz says and all these others and whatnot, is that they do say that sleeping is like in the top as far as when it comes to anti-aging.
Really?
Yeah, and that to get good 7 to 8 hours of sound sleep really helps more than any kind of makeup or Botox or anything in that regard. And unfortunately what happens with older adults is that they have more challenges with their sleep cycles. And so they're not able to, for as they're aging, be able to sleep as deep and longer. And so that is part of that aging process and such. But drinking water, and staying active, moving, just moving, and sleeping. Those are, of course, eating your blueberries.
I love blueberries.
Yeah, they're very good for you. I do find kale though just a little hard on the jaws sometimes, even though that's quite popular.
Kale is a rough.
It's
it's a rough edge, but it's a rough thing to.
but
you gotta mix it in with things.
fiber, right?
That's a fun way to end the
My
podcast
pleasure. My
on
pleasure.
fiber.
Yes.
And if anybody wants to help out and volunteer, you're always
give us a call because we have volunteer orientations where people can come and sort of check us out, sort of like that Match.com or eHarmony.com to see if any of our programs might be of interest and such. And we're also happy to just talk with individuals that would just like to, here's what I do, or here's my experience and such. Might there be something there, for me? So we are very happy to talk with folks.
Well, I really appreciate you talking to me, and thanks for all
pleasure.
the amazing, hard, dedicated work that you do.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks. Well, that was Grace Cheng-Braun, president of Wise and Healthy Aging. And I hope you got a lot out of that podcast, a lot of great information. I had no idea there was so much to learn about that. Aging and what that's going to look like for all of us. Thank you for listening to the podcast, tuning in. And I hope you come back. I got a lot of different stuff coming up. Can't tell you the order because I don't know yet. But thanks for listening. Bye.